Welcome back, listeners, to Learning from Friends. My name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide in this lovely adventure that we get to do bi-weekly. And it is just a fun time in the world. We're getting ready for Valentine's Day. It's coming up soon, even though this episode may not be coming out till March or April. It's just always interesting. The weather's starting to change in both positive and negative ways from hot and cold, but I'm glad we're getting to do this today. Now, as you all know, that before we go into our podcast, I've got my quote of the day. So for those that don't know, now you know. But here we go. My mom's quote of the day. Mom, take it away.
Never be afraid to let someone know if they brighten the room they just walked into. Sow seeds wherever you go. There is nothing better you can do with your words than plant a precious seed. By Donna Ashworth.
Thank you, Mom, for that quote to set us up on the right path for going into this episode. So today's a little different from Learning from Friends. This time, I really don't have a connection much with Thomas Paterson, who's working on our podcast here, other than we both have a love for Cherokee County in Canton, Georgia, is where the office is here. So what we've got here is Thomas Paterson coming in from the Cherokee County Historical Society and is going to give us some insight and understanding a little bit more about the county itself, because I've grown here my entire life. My family on both sides have kind of been in the county for a little over 125 years. And I mentioned Cherokee County a lot throughout my episodes just because it's so much fun and important to me. So, Thomas, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Kate. I'm excited to talk all things related to history. Full disclaimer, as the marketing and development guy, I will do my very best to answer all questions related to history.
I know it will be perfectly fine of what we're needing for, just because of you've been there for a while and you know and you love what you do.
Exactly.
That's what matters the most, when you're passionate about what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas, most audience does not know who you are, and that is A-okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization you work for.
Sure. So my name is Thomas Paterson. I currently work for History Cherokee. I am their development and communications coordinator. Just a little bit more about me personally. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. I left there at about 6 months old, moved down to Aiken, South Carolina, lived there for about a year. And from there, I've lived in Johns Creek, Georgia, which I know, Fulton County. I've lived there my whole life. So during that process, I have 2 degrees from Georgia State University. I have a bachelor's in history and a master's in history. So I do love the subject. And when I saw this position open up at History Cherokee, I thought, what a great way to get into the history field, to really immerse myself, keep something relevant, and just to learn more about a county that I really didn't know anything about back in May 2022. So I've learned a lot during my time, and I'm excited to, keep talking.
So you came in on the outside of, at the tail end kind of the major portions of COVID.
Yeah, more or less. And 4 months before we opened up the museum. So during that time, it was like I was in one area, but we were putting on a lot of hats trying to get this museum open. So,
and the museum is phenomenal. For those that kind of get the opportunity in downtown Canton, for those that have been around for a while, the old police station, they've now converted it into the Historical Society, and it's a lot bigger. It is very nice to be able to go into and see, get down and check it out for sure. Mm-hmm. Definitely recommend that for everyone.
100%.
There's going to be some vocabulary potentially in jargon that kind of pop up within the history world. Do you have any that you kind of want to introduce first to the audience before we go into it? Because you may use the word 3 or 4 times and someone's like, wait a second, what is that?
So off the bat, History Cherokee, as it's known now, did a rebrand in about 2020. And today we're known as History Cherokee. Prior to 2020, we were known as the Cherokee County Historical Society. And that started in 1975. So when we're talking about anything pre-2020, I might use the word Cherokee County Historical Society or just Historical Society, just because that's historically accurate. And then any present day activity will stick to History Cherokee. Beyond that, a couple of terms that might be helpful. Our museum is broken down in a couple of things. We first have 6 galleries. We have 6 galleries. And the gallery is kind of like a collection of multiple exhibits. And then an exhibit is like one focal point. Think of like a gallery is like a section of a book. And then like each exhibit is like its own chapter that tells its own story. So those are 2 that kind of come off at the top of my head. Of course, if I throw in any like really big terms, I'll probably stop and maybe give an explanation, hopefully. So
And if not, I'll kind of stop and I'll kind of be like, wait a second, just kind of pop in because I know as a teacher myself that I sometimes will all of a sudden throw out like QVC or IEP and like, wait a second, pause for a
Hmm.
minute. I know the jargon, but I'm like, so I'll catch
Right,
it up
right,
as
right.
well as we go through because that's just kind of, you get used to it. Like you say it all the time. So it just
Absolutely.
becomes one of those common things here. Now, there are many historical societies around the United States, whether it be county, whether it be city, whether it be
Mhm.
statewide, national level. Why is it important that we have historical societies around the entire United States and like counties and stuff?
So that is a great question. And it's funny. I remember in my graduate program, I stumbled on an article about the history of historical societies. And they really started in like the 70s and 80s as a way for these small communities that may have not felt that their stories were represented on a national level to be able to tell those stories, to be able to preserve the artifacts, the pieces of their past. So when we're thinking of the significance of like a historical society, one of the major things that they're doing is conveying a story that may have otherwise not been told, or multiple stories by preserving the objects, by attaching text to them to make sure that we can share that story as well with the people in our community, which is really important.
Oh yeah, it definitely is because of history, unless it's kind of written down or passed down orally, it goes away because of especially whenever you get all the transplants and people coming from all around the United States to new areas in a
Sure.
population sizes change is
Yep.
it gets lost from time to time,
Yep.
especially with generations that pass away. And I always like to use the line, everyone has a story inside of them to be able to share, but sometimes we just forget to ask before they
Mm-hmm.
pass away. And it's becoming more common in this age that people are either just selling artifacts or just kind of throwing them away because of we're not saving as much as we used to because
Mm-hmm.
coming out from the depression era wanted to be able to kind of keep as much information as possible, and then with things going digital in space as well that people want, there's so much stuff that people are just kind of starting to pass off. Especially I'm an auctioneer, so I see stuff coming through all the time of what people are just selling, and history gets lost from time to
Mm-hmm.
time as a result of that. In Progress of Man, we look at buildings that have to be taken down in order to put in new housings and things like
Mm-hmm.
that that happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
It is.
why do you find it important that someone know about their history and how that benefits community? Because of, as I mentioned earlier, we have people come from all over the United States that are kind of moving in here that may
Mhm.
not know much of anything about the county.
So in a place like Cherokee County, and we're in Canton, so I look around Canton, you can see history all around you, and you may not even be aware of it. One example that immediately comes to mind is the mill on Etowah. So you pull up to this shopping complex. There's restaurants, there's some shops, and you're like, "Oh, this exterior is interesting. Like, why does the building look like this?" And people may not realize that prior to being the mill on Etowah, it was the Canton Cotton Mill, number one. It was one of the biggest industries in Canton. And without knowing that history, you're kind of like, you're left puzzled, right? You're just looking at
Yeah,
this structure like, this doesn't look like the Avalon or
true,
like any
very
of
true.
these other, yeah, exactly. Or any of these other like big, shopping complexes. And I think that's something that Canton does really well is repurposing these historic structures to sort of maintain the historic character, but at the same time, like reusing the space really innovatively, really creatively. So it's you see history all around you, right? So I feel like that's the big takeaway is if you can see it around you, why not learn about it?
I agree 110% because if we don't ask, we don't talk about it, the story
Mm-hmm.
kind of fades away.
Yeah.
And my grandfather worked in Canton Mill, number one, and number two. Every so often, he would walk over between the two, and so it near and dear to my heart. The mill lofts and the Jones Building and things like that as well. Like
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
grew up in the area. It's just I always try to plug as much as I can around anywhere, like going to any museum or going to any stuff. It's always just important to preserve the most that we can with that, and that's
Mhm.
part of what I like to do at Learning from Friends as well, and that kind of little fun stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now the Historical Society offer a lot of variety of different things. What do you offer to the public, like exhibits and ways to kind of be able to learn, whether it be multimedia or firsthand?
So there are a couple of different ways. So we've talked about the Cherokee County History Center that is located in downtown Canton, And that contains 6 galleries spanning about 12,000 years of Cherokee County history. So if you're looking to get a history lesson in a physical space, in a museum, that's a great way to get involved. In the museum, we host a variety of different programs and lectures. We have a bi-monthly series. It's called Here. These lectures are free to attend, and we just invite people who are experts on a variety of different subjects to kind of talk either about local history, about Georgia history, about maybe Metro Atlanta history. We try to keep it local when we can, but that's a great way to get involved, right? It's just to sit down in a lecture and hear someone talk about, for instance, like gold in Cherokee County.
Oh yeah.
Because that's a huge part of our history. We also have like hands-on workshops. History Factory is that series. And I think our next one, which is slated for late March, is on canning or food, because we have a current temporary exhibit called Serving Up History, which should be open when this podcast comes out, hopefully.
Hey, yeah.
That talks about the history of food in Cherokee County and all of these family recipes. It's been a really neat exhibit. And then beyond that, we have a variety of different resources as well to look at. February 1st, we launched our Black History driving tours in Canton and Woodstock. And that's a resource that will be freely accessible all year round. So you can just visit our website. You can check that out. It's a great way to learn about these Black communities in Woodstock and in Canton. And then there's also a variety of walking tours as well in Ball Ground, in Canton. I want to say there's one in Woodstock. We might be updating that currently. But there are so many different ways to get involved and learn about your history. So
with the driving tours and the walking tours, is this something that you download like a map and it sets up, or you organize with a person individually and y'all meet up to kind of go through?
So these are all self-guided experiences.
Okay.
For the driving tour, there's a link on our website currently. And when you click on that, it'll show you the sites and you can kind of read it like an article. That's the nice thing about it, is there's these wonderful images you can scroll through and you get some more context about places like Pea Ridge and places like that. And then, for the walking tours, it's a printout brochure. You can just take them at your own pace and you just get to learn about the different buildings around your area, which is really cool.
That's cool. And you said that just opened up you just got that put out just here in February, the start of February.
Yeah, the driving tour specifically was, February 1st.
Awesome.
It's a very new project. Yes.
I'm going to have to definitely go in and check that out here in the near future and actually try to work it out on my motorbike, just riding around and doing it on my motorbike a little differently. I'm trying to find excuses just to get out and ride. It's always fun.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
So there is the society itself has many roles, as you said, many hats kind of that sometimes you have to be able to wear.
Yeah.
What role does the society have in recognizing historical significance into an area? Because that could range anywhere from just a plot of land to a building of land to just, it could be a wide range of things.
No, it absolutely can. And in recognizing the significance, it's kind of twofold. When you're talking about Cherokee County and you have numerous cities and unincorporated communities as well, we aren't necessarily able to tell every history possible. And so I don't want us to say just because it's not in the museum, it's not historically significant, because it absolutely could be. The stories change, right? But for us, I think as a historical society, as History Cherokee, we do what we can just to kind of spotlight these stories, things that might just have been lost, and really try to just shed light on different chapters of our history, different industries, for instance, that made Cherokee County what it is today, different people that made it very significant. So I like to think of us as it's almost like if you were to take this really big book on Cherokee County, like a historical society, kind of does the highlights.
Yeah.
It's like that yellow highlighter. And it's okay, cool. That's what we highlight now, but that's not necessarily mean that that's the only part of the book that you need to read, right? So
true.
That's kind of the role we occupy.
Yeah, because we can be overwhelmed with information and knowledge of just, you could sit back and read thousands of pages about something, but being able to get it kind of broken down, and which is why I always like your exhibits where you focus in on, hey, we're going to focus in on this one topic right here, or hey, we're going to focus in on this time period that may be a little bit broader in order to kind of catch your attention. And it's a rotating exhibits too, which is great because of how long I'm just curious on, do you keep exhibits for 6 months, 3 months before you kind of rotate, or is it a yearly thing?
So we have got 5 permanent galleries and 1 gallery that hosts temporary exhibits. We try to do 3 each year. So they stay around for about 4 to 5 months.
Nice. Yeah, because it takes a lot to be able to set one up, tear one down, And
Yes.
yes, like there's a lot in trying to curate it. Oh my gosh, that's just a giant piece of work, and you need a lot of people involved.
It very much is. Yeah, our exhibits manager, Kaylee, we just put up this exhibit serving up history, and she's like, okay, and now in another week, I've got to plan the next one.
Once one thing goes, you
So
go to the next one. It's always that kind of build
exactly.
up. Like that's what I always say whenever I'm working at auction with an individual like benefit fundraisers. I go, well, we finished this year's. Let's get ready for next year. Let's start
Mhm.
building because the
Exactly.
further you can get ahead of it, the better you can. Now, you mentioned earlier about there's just, variety of different topics and stuff that you can be able to kind of look at throughout history. And you just put out the new program that was talking about where you can do like the drives and the walks around Cherokee County and kind of see.
Mhm.
Now, history can be beautiful. It can be very dirty at times between the two different sides.
Okay.
How do you represent those harsh times or harmful sides of history in order to be able to learn about it so we don't ignore the existence, because there's always a purpose or meaning to how things develop. Like you can look at Fort Buffington and the Trail of Tears here in Cherokee County and that harshness to it and the struggles with the gold mines. And then you can look at the different communities that have kind of popped up and been not necessarily shunned, but looked down upon in Cherokee County. But this could be anywhere.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I think the big thing that we do is we don't whitewash it. I think one of the major benefits of opening a museum so recently in 2022 is we've had control over the narrative that we tell across our galleries. So when we get to something like the Trail of Tears, which we touched on towards the end of Gallery 1, we don't hide the detrimental impact that had on the Cherokee people, on the Creekland people, and all of these other different indigenous groups that were forcefully displaced from where they were. We don't necessarily, we aren't just like, here's the Trail of Tears. Okay, next thing. We really do try to, we delve into that. One of the more visceral examples of this comes when you enter Gallery 3 and you turn to the right, and there's this little corner on Jim Crow segregation, and immediately to your right, you see a Klan hood. And the story of that Klan hood is that it was found in the Cherokee County courthouse. We don't know who it belonged to or anything like that, but it's displayed there because the KKK, whether we like it or not, we obviously don't. There's a very strong history there in Georgia, and you can't hide that, right? We have to put it out there, because if we pretend that something like the KKK didn't happen or the Trail of Tears didn't happen, we're doing a serious disservice in telling the past. So we don't hide any of that.
And that's a beautiful thing to kind of hear, to be able to at least, like, you need to recognize that without this bad thing that happened, we wouldn't have evolved and changed potentially to a better society as a whole, because if we learned from our wrongs in order to make this better thing, to be able to try to eliminate this part here, but not eliminating the history at all, because of, again, it's a part of it. That's whenever like teaching war and teaching battles, I always look at, okay, guys, there's three sides to a coin. If any of my students are listening, y'all all know that phrase. There's three sides to a coin. And just because it's different doesn't always mean it's wrong. You got to look at all those different perspectives and all the ideas to understand it fully. Exactly. You mentioned about Mill 1, and we have Mill 2, we have the Jones Building. This is all in downtown Canton area. How does the society decide which buildings to recognize and preserve? And what is that process? Because of over the past like 10 years, I've seen a lot of major buildings that I grew up seeing and hearing from my dad of like, oh yeah, this building in Hickory Flat used to represent this. And then, in Holly Springs, we had this building, and then it's been torn down. And I've gone around and collected bricks from these buildings that have kind of counted half of my backyard of for me still representing the importance that kind of belonged there.
Sure. There are two different ways to think about this. So each year we have what we call the Historic Preservation Awards banquet. And every year we have a historic sites committee that's formed. And at that time, they evaluate a series of properties that are nominated. Those are either self-nominations or people nominate the buildings for someone else. And once we get those submissions, the committee then goes out to those sites and they just explore the place. They talk to the owners, they try to get a sense of the history that's there, and they take photos, and they are really looking for how these properties are, number one, what are the historic elements of the structure? And then how have those buildings either been reinterpolated or restored in a way that makes sense for them? So it's like this blend of like keeping the history alive, but then also like some innovative parts that you might not think about. And that's for the preservation awards. And while we do award those on an annual basis, they don't, unfortunately, protect the site from demolition, unfortunately. And the second part of the coin has to do with the National Register. This is much more weighted and requires like federal involvement. So there's, of course, like a variety of forms you have to fill out. Yeah, things of that nature. And that is it's definitely a more extenuous process. And we did establish National Register historic districts in Canton and Ball Ground, which make tax credits available to eligible properties. Fun fact. And while they are recognized as historically significant, it doesn't necessarily place a restriction on them. So if the owner of that property, for instance, even though they may be federally protected under the National Register, they can do what they want with their property, more or less.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. So it again, like we do what we can to recognize the buildings, but it doesn't necessarily protect them from whatever may happen.
Yeah, because you can't save everything, unfortunately, especially whenever your population is getting so massive in size. Because I look at whenever I was born in '89, and then looking at like current day Cherokee County's population, it is, oh my word, so drastically different. And you look at places of trying to be able to build roads and trying to be able to build these businesses to kind of keep the county growing. It's really hard to do that. To kind of keep up between those two. And I understand the progress of man, but my bitter, angry old man is kind of like, get off my lawn and leave us alone. But that's hard because you have to understand both perspectives here.
No, it's valid. And a lot of that agency comes to the property owners themselves. So that is a part of the equation as well.
Yeah. Now there's so much space that you said you can keep, only so much that are there. And I'm sure you have people that will sometimes like contact or call and be like, hey, I've got this item that I think would be kind of cool, or you kind of locate certain things that kind of pop up here. How can people donate these items? And what do you take into consideration before accepting them? Or what can you kind of not take? Because again, you can't take everything.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, we can take items, and we have a tab on our website that I'm trying to find now to get more information on that. But the big thing that we factor in when we're considering donations is, number one, its ties to Cherokee County. You know, how strong of a case can you make for the historic significance relative to, you know, this county?
Yes.
And also the condition as well is factored into that. My advice for anyone that is interested in donating an object or a photograph or any number of historic artifacts, to contact our collections and exhibits manager, Kaylee. She is very friendly and is more than willing to hear your case.
Yeah, that's something that is very important to be able to make sure that it does connect back to the county and that it does have that significance to be able to do so. Because again, only so much space that is there to be able to do so. But also, do y'all take items like on loan and then give back, or is it like you're donating it and it's kind of like permanently kind of there?
We do have some items on loan. For instance, some of our objects in Gallery 1 that tell the story of like the Cherokee and Creekland people. Some of those are on loan from the Funk Heritage Center. In other cases, we do accept donations, and those can just be like donations. But yeah, to get a better sense of that, again, my recommendation would be to contact our collections manager.
And I definitely will be putting links to like things inside our show notes. So anybody that's kind of looking through, I will have show notes down at the bottom. There may be like 50 links, which is just fine, but I'll have them some labeled so you kind of know what you're looking for, listeners, because that's important to be able to get everything you need in terms of knowledge there.
Mm-hmm.
When you get these items, you have to be able to try to preserve them. You need to present them and honor them without, again, damaging them too much or misrepresenting them in a way. Because you said you have your collections manager that kind of go through, listen to the case and getting information. Like, where do you go from there once you've got that item?
So for the preservation part of this, we use archival and collections care best practices for storage and handling documents and objects. Just for example, you know, paper documents are stored in acid-free folders and boxes, unlike a plain old cardboard box, which has a lot of acid.
Oh, yeah.
And might deteriorate the texture, the text on that document. And they're kept in a storage room, which is held at a very stable temperature to make sure that, again, like nothing gets, like paper is very fragile.
Yes,
so we're just making sure that we preserve that the best we can. And when it comes to the other side of this, which is once we have, these pieces of history, how to represent them, we try to make the content related to the objects as approachable and honest as possible. Because to honor an object is to honor their story. Right. And so when we do that, we don't hide the facts that may be a bit more emotional or a bit more tough to swallow there. And then aside from pulling an object on display, we provide insightful and guiding interpretations that visitors can get, again, that deep sense of what this is, its historical context, as well as its current significance to the world that we live in now.
Yeah, and that definitely goes a long way with telling its story, because each item can tell its story, whether it's not actually physically with words, but seeing it, and oh my gosh, it just goes a long way. And I'm one of those weird history people that I'll sit and I'll look at one item for like 10, 15 minutes just to kind of like look from all angles and see all the different stuff to try to interact with it as different ways as possible, which is not for everybody. Some people just need that subtext, read it, move on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a program that I got to be involved with for a little while, and I haven't been able to like ask any more questions about it and contacting back, but y'all do a little bit of story collecting within the community to kind of hear about firsthand stories, events from the counties, like past, whether it has been in different little unincorporated Cherokee County or little small cities that kind of have popped up here.
For sure.
How can someone get involved with this, and how can someone access the audio, kind of post them out, because there's a lot there to be able to like hear about. And then is there a set group of questions that if someone wanted to sit down and record and submit something, what can kind of be done within this entire program?
Yeah. So for this story collecting, right, we have a oral history committee, and it's been a while since they've done a project. I think 2021, most of our focus from 2021 to now, of course, has been just opening this museum, building it.
That's a lot to do.
It is a lot. Yeah, no, I learned that the hard way. But yeah, no, we have an oral histories committee. I'm not sure if they are currently organizing a project as of speaking about this. My recommendation, though, for anyone that would be interested in getting involved in that committee would be to contact Stephanie Joyner. We can add that to the 50 links.
Oh, yeah.
Down in the notes. Yeah, just to see if there's any interest. I can say that when we do some projects, and the Black History Driving Tour is an example of this, we do rely on oral histories to really flesh out the story. Because when we're telling history, especially Black history in particular, we may not have those physical art objects to tell the story. So we need to rely on the people who have lived there for years and years to explain, like, what is this place that we're looking at? Who lived here? What is the so what of it? And in terms of, in thinking of just like those set of questions, I want to say we have a form, and I'm not too sure about that. I do know that when they organized some of these projects back in like 2021, 2019, the focus was really just to get a sense of like people's lives in Cherokee County. Like, we would start in childhood, tell us a little bit about your family. And then from there, it's kind of free flowing. Like, what was it like growing up in, let's say, like Woodstock or Ball Ground in 1970, what have you. So there is a little bit of structure there, but it's also like just letting the conversation go as well. And I can look around to see if there's something possible, but at the moment, nothing's coming to mind.
Once you've collected these, is this something that you'll have like an archive of to be able to access to, or right now that's something that's maybe being built? Because of that's something that always catches my attention of going back through, because I've done StoryCorps and I've done a couple other different oral history programs, and being able to go through and like search a keyword or search something and to be able to kind of locate to kind of hear some information on.
Yeah. So we do have a research library. It is open Mondays and Fridays from, I want to say it's 10 to 4 by appointment only. But if you book an appointment through that research library, we have a computer in there that does have these oral histories. So if you're interested in just like glancing them through, listening through, you can do that. In addition to that, there's also like a ton of different primary documents and books as well. So for anyone that is interested in learning more, maybe learning more about your family, learning more about like the property that you're on, learning more about the area that you live in, learning more about an event, our research library is a fantastic resource for that. And to book an appointment, I'm going to plug our collections and exhibits manager again, Kate.
Yeah.
Yeah, get in contact with her. We have a form that you need to fill out to just give us a little more information about what you're looking for. And then, yeah, you'll be able to do whatever research you'd like in there.
So are you booking like a time frame to kind of be in, or are you just kind of booking for a, like, you have the day to kind of be able to go in there, maybe 3 or 4 other people kind of around you?
Typically, it's a one-on-one session.
Okay.
Usually when people book, we block off that time and then we try to figure out like what you're looking for. We have some stuff available on site, and there's some stuff that's also currently in the Cherokee County Courthouse, which is a big reason why we do it by appointment only, because if you're looking for
Ah,
something specific to your family, it may be on site, but also may be in a different location. So we just want to make sure that we can get the relevant documents that you need to do your research. But yeah, typically those have been one-on-one. I can't think of a time where we've had multiple researchers in the library, but that also might be of a demand thing versus.
true. You never know with kind of what could, each situation is different. That could be for sure. Earlier, we kind of, I will always jump back and forth saying now, earlier, it's just one of some of my words that pop up. And there's a lot of experts, there's a lot of people that get involved to kind of make this work. What experts are connected into the historical society in order to authenticate or help tell the story if you've only got bits and pieces?
Yeah, I think there's really two ways of thinking about expertise when it comes to local history. Our staff here, are trained in history. In some cases, like our education manager, Harvey, has a museum studies degree. Our executive director, Stephanie, has a master's in historic preservation. So we have those like formal degrees and formal trainings to help us tell history, to research and interpret different objects. But the other side of it too is that a lot of the experts outside of our staff are just people that have lived here for as long as they have, people who have held on to family memories, who may know like the other people that have lived in Cherokee County. So we rely on like both people who have just been in and around this area for so long, who just know the people, the places, what events we're talking about. Like their expertise is almost as valuable, if not equally valuable to, those degrees that are within our team.
That's the one thing. Expert can go a long way of just not being a piece of paper on the wall, and that's something that I highly agree with, of having that firsthand experience. If you've lived there, you've seen it, you've touched it, cool. That's talk.
I want to hear you.
And the society relies a lot on using volunteers and funding that comes from the people around you. How is the society funded?
So History Cherokee is a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're now in my lane of things. So I'm like, yes, development.
There we go. There we go.
In terms of our funding, we do rely on a lot of community support. It's individuals or families who are making donations, becoming members with us, that really do support our mission. We also do receive like grant funding and funding from foundations, which really does go a long way. So our members, our donors, a lot of people make it very possible for us to continue our work. And if you want to support us, historycherokee.org/support. There are a lot of different ways to keep us rolling. That is another one of the, it may be like 60 links at this point.
Hey, that is A-okay. That's the point of, you need to have the links down there at the bottom in order to know where to go.
Scroll down, folks.
Amen. Amen. Look through it. There's always something there. And it may be just a name. It may just be, a link to part of the website. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Now, you said a lot of this, again, comes back to the people. Like, how, if someone wanted to get involved, like volunteer work, or what roles are kind of needed around the county in order to keep the place rolling? Because if you only have so much funding that you can hire people with, and volunteers are always very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Volunteers keep us rolling, right? So we have a volunteer coordinator, Chuck Douglas. I recommend anyone interested in volunteering with us to kind of reach out to him. I believe his contact information is somewhere on our website. If not, it will be by the time of recording this. In terms of the different roles that are involved, our museum, we do need docents. And for listeners tuning in, a docent is basically someone who can guide people through our galleries and take groups and just give a little bit more extra context to what's happening with each exhibit. So if you're someone that is interested in guiding, it could be a school group, could be a senior living community, any number of different groups, right? If you're interested in taking them through and just like getting more involved with the historical element of this, that's a great way to get involved. In addition to this, there are sort of miscellaneous roles. We do have special events. And at some point, I feel like I need to plug in our annual fundraiser, Kentucky Derby.
Oh, yeah, the Derby days. Yep.
Derby days, yes. That's been going on for 21 years now as of recording this. So if you want to get involved with special events like that, we do have a volunteer interest form that is on our website. Again, go through the 60 links, whatever. It'll be down there. But that's a great way to get involved. And then, we also just do things like mailings where we may just need someone to come in and tab newsletters or put stamps on envelopes. And as it may sound tedious, but it's actually kind of a fun time because you just get to like talk to people as you're doing this task. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved.
And that is something that I've gotten to do in the past. And I will say it is enjoyable, the different people that you do meet. And surprisingly, the conversations that do strike up, and it's whether you're young in your teens or you're up in your 70s, 80s, 90s, it's a good time to be able to learn from each other because a lot of the people that are going in there actually have lived in the county, have been around, and they want to listen to you ask questions. They want to be kind of supportive in that role, and having those people that are going through and giving those tours too. Like you have coming up this afternoon, was it a school coming in or is it some group that's coming?
Yes, this is the Cherokee Chamber's leadership class. So they take their leadership class. Yeah, they're visiting our museum. So they're going to look around the galleries, learn a bit more, and then we're going to do some competitive trivia. So it should be a fun time. Yeah.
Definitely schools, Cherokee County.
Yes,
all
absolutely.
The schools, contact, go tour this thing. It's important.
Links down below.
Exactly. Contact on this eighth grade Georgia studies. This is a perfect space for you to be able to do so.
Sure, absolutely.
All about that one. All about this one. Now, this is something that I've been looking forward to. This is my part that I've talked to people around the county. I've talked to people that are really close to me, my family members, friends, and just my own general care and passion here. Cherokee County. Let's go into talking about Cherokee County itself here.
Okay.
So you mentioned that Cherokee, the Cherokee Nation, is that kind of how we got the name Cherokee County as a result?
That is exactly why. Also, another fun fact, the name Ball Ground, the city of Ball Ground, is actually named after a game that the Cherokee people, or Creekland people, I should say, played there. It's a stick and ball game, and they just named the city Ball Ground based off that game.
And I love that y'all got what was I can't remember was the Georgia Swarm to come down and do a speak and talk about the actual in Ball Ground, talking about the game and a couple other different evolutions to it that I thought was really neat. Unfortunately, I was sick that day, and my mother and I had planned to come. We wound up missing it because of that, just being sick. But the different talks you guys do, like at the rock bars and stuff, are always really cool just to kind of sit back and hear because of, and y'all did through Zoom for a while. And was it Zoom or Teams? I can't remember that y'all were able to see those events.
Yeah. And we tried to live stream them on Facebook. I think at one point I tried to stream our Gold Rush talk on Facebook streaming, but then the screen was flipped. There were some audio things. So it's definitely of interest to revisit again because those lectures can be just really insightful and really engaging.
And you only have so much space to fit people in too. So that's nice. And some people may be further away that would love to be able just to kind of hear what's happening.
Exactly.
Over the years, again, gold, we had different mines and we had different kind of industries that came in. What are some of the major industries that Cherokee thrived around?
Fantastic question. So I can think of I want to say it's either 3 or 4, probably 4. First is marble. Marble is a really big one. We have a marble quarry that is located, it was initially in Tate, Georgia, but the marble that was in Tate was then brought down to Ball Ground, where it was then basically refined and sculpted and redistributed. And it's a big reason why you see so much marble all over the place. A lot of the buildings in Ball Ground have marble incorporated. When you come to our museum, we have marble lining the gift shop as well as the entry points for each of our galleries. So marble is really important. Another one that people may not know about is we were the broiler capital of the world.
Yeah.
At some point. Represent in the 50s and 60s. So of course, chicken, huge industry. The poultry industry is major. and still continues to play a very important part
Yeah, we got
in Cherokee.
Pilgrim's Pride off of not East Cherokee, but Univetter. That still processes. Yeah.
Exactly. And another one, of course, is denim. We've talked about the Canton Cotton Mill. There was two different mills that produced a unique blend of denim called scrub denim. And with that also came the Salty Dog branding.
Oh yeah, good old Salty Dog.
Yeah, rugged as an old hound dog, but soft as a puppy. And it's just a really cute little mascot. But yeah, those are some of the big ones. There's obviously a few more, but yeah, those are just some major highlights.
And if you want to purchase one of the Salty Dogs, they have all the little plushes that you can be able to get and see.
Sure do. And there's a children's book, Salty Dog Goes to Denim Day. So definitely recommend that as well.
And that was a big, huge holiday for the longest time of Denim Days, of going into town and having the march through town and having all those different little parades that go to it, all the fun little festivals that built around it. Because man, that was huge. And I'll try to see if I can go through and find it on YouTube. There's the Salty Dog song that was made and recorded to be able to use for advertising. It was so neat to think about it. And I was always used to seeing the Salty Dog denim logo, and then when I saw Hush Puppy logo for the shoes, my brain's like, wait a second, what's the difference here between the two? Because I saw the Salty Dog denim first before I saw the Hush Puppy logo, and I'm like, did they steal from us?
Okay. Yeah, they jacked our whole flow.
Exactly. And the denim is very important because it was stretchy but durable. Exactly. And it changed all around the world of how we kind of look at denim today. And Wrangler jeans and all these other companies actually would purchase the denim and the cloth from here in order to be able to be used. And being able to bale the cotton, have a place to process it, and getting it down to the lofts to be able to process it, and then use the dyes, and using all the different material to get there. It was a long process, which took hundreds of workers, and it provided so much jobs around the county. Because my grandfather went from all the way up in Freehome, rode I can't remember the name of the bus. It was the Bill bus down to Canton. He would work, then come home. They owned chickens. And so then he worked in the evening doing the chickens, doing the broilers. And then on the Curtis side of the family, they did the same thing with the chickens. So being able to have all that in place, I mean, it was a rural community of agriculture. And then you had industry too there that connected both ways. And having the railroad that ran through town is just so drastically important to connect around Georgia, because of down south, that was, I mean, agriculture still, even today, is a major industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That there was several, I mentioned the Denim Days, that kind of the festival that came around that. What kind of events have taken place in the county to help continue to keep the identity of the county?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And yeah, no, I immediately think of Denim Days because it was just so significant, right? I mean, it was the early 1950s, it was declared that, it was officially August 28th, I think, is the official Denim Day. And that story is still being played out today. The mill on Etowah hosts a Denim Day. It's in October. They should move it to this summer to make it accurate. It's fine.
You got to start somewhere, You got
to start somewhere, exactly. But they're still honoring that history, which is really cool. And I know is very formative for our identity. The other part of it, too, is July 4th, and I can't remember the exact title now, but it was to celebrate the broiler industry, to celebrate chicken. I remember specifically, and I can't think of the name of the event off the top of my head, but yeah, celebrating these like massive industries that provided jobs to so many people really did, help form what this county's identity is. So yeah, those are the two I think that come to mind.
And I believe it was Karen Smithwick, correct me if I'm wrong on this, actually did a poultry book that you can go through and read. There are so many nice books around the county that we'll get to some of those actually here in a little while that we'll kind of plug in, because there's so many great books that the county has done. And Karen did a phenomenal job of going through and collecting a lot of those stories. And it took us a while to find it, but we kept looking we used to have, I believe it was 2 or 3 signs entering and exiting Cherokee County that was "Welcome to the broiler capital of the world." And I remember stories of my mom telling me of if you went to a Cherokee County Cherokee High School basketball game, one of their sayings used to be chicken scratch, or is it chicken pluckers? My mom's going to yell at me now.
Yeah, it's chicken pluckers.
Yeah, that was it. And so, yeah, being able to kind of have that association is
Oh,
so key and important. And basketball was a huge, massive thing for the county for years, whether it was rec league or whether it was the high schools that were like organized statewide. We had some great teams over the years that went to state several different times, and having that little
yeah.
rivalries between your schools was always very important to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
have. And now we have so many schools in the county in comparison to what it used to be smaller amounts. So, and some of the communities that were some of the strongest basketball communities was the Tippins community with basketball. They were very well known for their basketball. And I'm spacing
Mm.
on the coach's name that was notorious, like one of the best coaches in the county in terms of his record and keeping that kind of in place. But that was a big community place for basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there are several families that
Mhm.
and people that have kind of shaped and helped the county grow. Do you have some names of some families that have been very key and important to the growth?
There are tons. I can name a couple. And of course, I'll provide a resource to learn a bit more about the many families that made Cherokee County what it is. Immediately, what comes to mind is the Roberts family. The Roberts are one of the first families to be established in Ball Ground. And the A.R. Roberts home, or A.W. Roberts home, is one of 6 properties that are on our national register in Cherokee County. So very important family there. I think of the Johnston family as well. And I also have to plug Rebecca Johnston, who has been so integral to both this historical society and History Cherokee. But yeah, her family has just been very involved with the history and very pivotal to defining us. I also think about like the Jones family, the Grishams and the Galts, who again, like when you talk about like Canton or really just anywhere in Cherokee County, like their names, you'll see them.
Yep. R2 Jones Library, the Jones Building, just like, oh, it's just so much.
Yeah, there is a ton. And for listeners at home who are just curious, because there's, again, like I said, a lot of families, the heritage of Cherokee County, Georgia, 1831 to 1998. It's this really big red book in our museum shop. I highly recommend picking it up if you are interested in learning just about any of the families, because we list a ton of them in this book. So there's just so many people to give credit to. It's kind of hard to like filter.
It is definitely so hard for it because you always throughout life had heard keeping up with the Joneses. My brain didn't think that was outside of Cherokee County for the longest time because I was like, it's the Joneses, it's this kid, keep up with the Joneses. And then like as I've gotten older, like I was thinking it was like middle school or high school. It's like, oh yeah, keeping up with the Joneses. And everyone's like, oh yeah, like Archie Jones and all of them. They're like, no, that's like a saying outside of Cherokee County. I'm like, oops, my bad. But I love that earlier you had mentioned about the Black community driving tour, because there were so many different minorities that made the county work and that we kind of overlook. How are minorities represented in history of the county?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. I'll highlight specifically our Black community because it's Black History Month as of recording this. One of the key examples that comes to mind is in our documentary, The Way It Was, Stories of Cherokee County's Desegregation. It's this film that we hired a studio, and I'm blanking out on the name now, but our education manager, Harvey White, had a pivotal role in forming that film as well. And what the film does is basically interviews people who lived through segregation, people who lived through what we call Freedom Summer.
Okay.
I believe it's 1965 because it's like just after the Civil Rights Act is passed. But, different people who played a pivotal role in advocating for their freedom, in desegregating places that were still honoring segregated policies, in spite of the fact that it was federally now illegal. But the key way to, I think the most important part when you're representing people of color and different communities is to make sure that their voices are heard, to make sure that they are involved with the process of writing that history. When we put together Gallery 1 and we're talking about the Cherokee and the Creekland and different people, we consulted multiple different groups who have been writing that history. The Georgia chapter of the Trail of Tears Association was one, the Funk Heritage Center another. And it was an Atlanta Indigenous Peoples group. But to make sure that we're telling the story in a way that is representative of their history, right? So those are just a couple examples. Just making sure that, when you're talking about communities that have been historically underrepresented and in some cases completely misrepresented, making sure that they are very involved in the way that their story is told is so pivotal and important.
Yeah. I mean, it totally is to this day and in the past of history is things got lost for a long period of time just because of, I'm not trying to sound mean or terrible about this. I apologize if it comes off rude for people, is it was a lot of white history for the longest of time.
Yeah.
And things got completely buried and things got kind of pushed to the back burner for so many generations on it, unfortunately. And that's kind of the dirtier part of history is now we're going back and we're uncovering it and we're trying to, resalvage and find all these things, which I'm so happy with this driving tour that I'm looking forward to going on and then in the area for it. I'm gonna look back in my brain of memory of like, okay, have I driven down this road yet? Have I not driven down this road? Like I've made it a point to, in the past few months, of just driving down roads that I've lived here my entire life, but being able to, like, I haven't gone down the road before or I haven't gone to that area before, and kind of seeing that just to kind of expand out your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, there are several buildings that we've mentioned, like with Mill Loft 1 and 2, Jones buildings, stuff like that. How many buildings does Cherokee County recognize as protected or, natural registry and things like that?
Yeah. So when we're talking about the National Register, I'm counting them now just to make sure I've got the right number. It's 7.
Okay.
So we've got Canton Cotton Mills number 2. We've got, let's see, those are both historic districts. We've got multiple historic districts. So the Canton Historic District would be one, Ball Ground Historic District, another. The Cherokee County Courthouse is protected. Crescent Farm, which is now more known as the Brock Barn, which is actually one of our properties that we directly oversee, is recognized as well. The Alfred W. Roberts House, the Woodstock Depot, and I believe that is all of them, but it's a total of 7 with 2 historic districts.
And that's a lot of very important pieces to be able to go through it and see, especially because of looking at Woodstock now at how it's blown up in size of how many people are around there. And you see this little depot here that's still remaining. You're like, yes, very, very important of this stop along the way as all this stuff is leaving out of Cherokee County and going down towards Atlanta. It was one of the last stops for a long time. Because with population here, oh my gosh, like I think the number that I was kind of looking up recently was we're either really close to or a little bit over 300,000 people in Cherokee County.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. How has the county changed over the decades from being this kind of smaller farmer community to these large community of where we're building 1,000 community houses in one little area, and then that used to be just harvesting pine trees, or it used to be hundreds of acres of farmland that is now just built with houses. And how do we keep up with all that? I mean, I don't even know how we keep up with how making this work. And this is where my old man comes into play of like, no, we're losing all this land.
No, it is a great question. I remember I took a course, it was US cities, and my professor always said that the key factor in a place changing is transportation and access to transportation. So obviously, like early Cherokee County, right? Those like 1830s, 1840s, 1850s. You have those smaller agrarian communities. And then at some point, it's either the 50s or 60s, we get a railroad that kind of cuts through various places like Woodstock, Holly Springs. And of course, with the introduction of the railroad comes trade. There's trade, and there's also the ability for people to move from different parts of either the north, the south, the west, wherever they're coming from, into these new areas in the hopes of finding land. And of course, and the main thing, finding gold. That was a big motivator in the 1800s. And of course, over time, you have, with the expansion of the railroads, you then have these cities that start developing. You have the city of Canton, the city of Woodstock, the city of Ball Ground, Holly Springs, Waleska, and so on. And over time, we transition from railroads to cars. And so these cities then have to have streets that are paved. And of course, with the car, have more opportunity for people to then move in and find different homes. And of course, a big part of the road, we have to talk about I-575.
Oh, yeah. That's an important one.
It's huge, right? Because now you're able to take the highway and go from one city to the other, whereas otherwise it would have been, a much more lengthier trip or a different type of trip. And so now the county is also more interconnected with one another, right? So yeah, transportation, huge part of the reason why it grows. And as we were talking about this, I was looking at census demographics just to see like if there's a really big boom. And I'm looking at Woodstock in particular.
Oh,
And
yes.
at 1970, because you mentioned it, in 1970, we see 870. 1980, it's closer to 3,000, so 2,600 or so. 1990, we get to 4,000. And then by the 2000s, we're in 10,000. 2010, we're in 23,000. 2020, we're at 35. I mean, it just, it expands as more opportunities open up, as more places are opening up.
Yeah,
So
with Highway 92 was a big one for
Highway 92,
expanding
absolutely.
expanding out that area. And Highway 20, as that's starting to expand and that project getting bigger, is going to lead to a lot of other areas between Canton and Cumming that are now going to start making a little more boomer area. And that makes me a little sad because of my little town, like community of Freehome. I'm like, oh, we used to have to drive like 30 minutes to go to Cumming or go to Canton to get groceries. And we have the Publix there, and then they're building a new Freehome elementary school. And I'm like, it's going to be interesting to see how things continue to kind of grow. And now we're getting more parks too, which is really nice to kind of see around the county. And over the next 10 years, who knows what it'll look like as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned some earlier facts of like some just fun little different facts and everything. What are some like random facts that, people who have lived in the county maybe their entire lives or may have not even thought about that are new to the county? Is there anything you would like to kind of throw out there, fun little facts?
One that comes to mind, because we've talked about the mill, right? And I've given so much love to Salty Dog, but I think people forget that Salty Dog had a partner called the Cat's Meow. And of course, he is as pivotal to the history of Canton and the history of the cotton mill, as well. So people forget that there's technically two, if you can.
Oh my gosh, that. Wow. Again, that's awesome. I didn't know that one. I'm gonna have to look that one further up here.
Fun fact. Another one that comes to mind, the name Canton. I was trying to figure out like, why is this town called Canton? And a big reason for that is because the founders at the time thought this was an opportune place to grow silk. And silk, and of course, there's Canton, China, and then there's also Canton, Ohio. There's a lot of Cantons.
Oh gosh, almost every state has a Canton.
But yeah, it was initially named after the original Canton. I want to say it's China. I could be. I hope.
Yeah, it is. It is Canton, China.
Perfect, yeah,
that one I do know.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, yeah, because they thought this is the perfect place to grow silk, and then of course, that didn't pan out because the climate is very different. But that's why the place that is here, Canton, is called that. So that's another fun one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still constantly uncovering new information and covering all the different stuff that's out there. Mm-hmm. We've said Canton is like the located kind of that unofficial kind of capital, I'm going to call it, of
the county chair,
of Cherokee County, kind of though. Maybe it is official. I don't know. But there is a lot of different books that the county has had in place that you guys have. Do you have any recommendations of some of the books that people like may help give a little bit more of understanding, or they're just curious about Cherokee County?
Sure. I plugged one of them earlier, but like I said, The Heritage of Cherokee County, Georgia, 1831 to 1998 is a really big one. It's a very, very comprehensive history of everything Cherokee County. So it's massive, but also like if you're looking for anything, that's the book to go to. Another book that I would definitely recommend is Cherokee County, Georgia, A History, and that is by Rebecca Johnston. And it's a more condensed version of the book that I just mentioned, but she just tells the story of Cherokee County. So if you're new to the area, or maybe you're just like looking for a specific, portion of the history that you're interested in diving into, that's a great book to have as well. I also think of like, we have an Images of America series. So some of our cities are spotlighted there, and that's a great way to look through old photos. And we have one book, it's the Buddy Alexander collection, and I'm blanking out on the intro title, but it's this red book, and it goes through all of Buddy Alexander's photographs, which for folks who may not know, he was sort of Canton's unofficial photographer, but he has so many wonderful photographs of Canton, of also different areas of Cherokee County as well. So if you're interested in just looking through photos, that's a great one.
Yeah, and those all have like nice little captions underneath too, so it lets you know like where the actual like thing is, what the name of it was. I love that book to be able to go through. I think I have a whole entire bookshelf dedicated to all the different books that Cherokee County has kind of put up. And whenever there's new authors that pop up, I always wind up getting it. And you guys do a great job of on the website of having where you can be able to order the books and be able to get them to you. And y'all ship all over the United States.
Below. Check the
Yep.
link below.
Check the links, baby. Check the links that they are down there for. That's the kind of whole point. And there's a wide variety of everything within those topics, ranging from the chicken books down to Swamp Creek and all the different ones that are kind of out there. And the Funk Heritage Center as well does a great job with being able up on Reinhardt's campus, if you ever get the opportunity to kind of go there. And we have the Indian Festival, which is really cool to be able to go and see that. I give that a good shout out. And there's Heritage Days that they do up at Reinhardt. Always give those little opportunities there. Now, in Canton, if I'm driving through, where is History Cherokee located at?
Yeah, so the Cherokee County History Center is located on 221 East Marietta Street. If you know where Brown Park is, or like directly adjacent, like that is basically right behind our building. And we're 1 block over from Main Street. So you have all those businesses and shops in Main Street. We're just 1 block over on Marietta Street.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how the Jones building continues to progress. Sure, because it's kind of coming towards the end of its completion right now of the new different buildings that are going in. You've got the restaurants, you've got all this different stuff. And the old Wexler toy store has been opened up as a nice little gallery you can go into. They have open mic nights. They have little music that's starting to play. You can bring your own you can bring your own art materials, or they have art materials there. And I mean, there's so much work that's been done in downtown Canton that I'm so glad to see it kind of getting that rebirth here.
Yeah.
Now, we've discussed several different things here throughout the podcast here. Are there any things that we still need to kind of cover that may have overlooked during our time that you would like to discuss?
We've covered a lot in this hour. I just realized it's been an hour.
Yeah, time flies, man, when you're having fun. And this was a very condensed version of the outline I kind of made you, because I had one that was like 15 pages long, and I'm like, no, Cade, you cannot take that much of a person's time up. You gotta reel back. And some people that know me are gonna be like, I'm glad you pulled back, but maybe another time, and go out and find people.
Exactly. Or maybe like in episode 2, and we'll get someone else from the office to.
I'm always open to that. Throw that back out there. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I would love to do more.
Yeah, I love that. Just be on the lookout for our events page. I highly recommend checking that out. We've talked a lot about the galleries, but we do a lot of really interesting programs and different events. So that'll be, again, one of those links down below. But I think we've covered most of everything I can think of.
Now, are there any last minute words of wisdom? It could be just your general philosophy on life, or just anything of that you would like to leave the audience with.
For the folks listening, when you go to a place, right? You may look around, you may be wondering, like, how did this area that I'm in, why does it look this way, right? And I want to encourage folks to just know that history is living, right? History is all around you. And those stories that are attached to either structures or families or, events that you may read about, do some more digging, just look around. Curiosity, I think, is your best friend, even though it says curiosity killed the cat. But if you're studying history, you should be fine. There's no danger there.
Cats had 9 lives, man.
That's also true. But yeah, I think curiosity is great. And if you're in a place and you're like, I don't really know what's going on here, or why this looks the way it does, do some research. It's fun, look around, be curious.
And give us a couple of ways to kind of reach out and learn more, following the organization. Like, I'll have the links, but give me some names, or give me some stuff that could be kind of right off the bat that maybe if they were digging through the links, they could have a little bit more to kind of look with.
Yeah. So first and foremost, historycherokee.org. That is our website. I try to update the home menus as much as I can with the most relevant or pertinent information. So definitely check out historycherokee.org. You can find us on social media at History Cherokee on Instagram, and on Facebook, it's Cherokee County History Center. Those are our 2 really big platforms, and we do post updates. We post, different histories, different things of the past. Other than that, sign up for our mailing list. That's at the bottom of the website, and we send an email. It's not too spammy. It's like at the top of the month. You just get an overview of our programs, events, things like that. So yeah, those are just a couple of ways to track our progress.
My thing is donate money. Come on, guys, donate.
That is a huge one. Yeah, if you want to become Yeah, members. If you want to become a member, historycherokee.org/membership. We have a great group of folks who are our members. And when we do these like different receptions, and you can really connect with people in Cherokee County and just learn more about the place that you live at. Or if you're outside of the county, you can learn more about this really cool area.
Yeah.
Membership is a big one. Of course, donations keep the lights running, keep the lights on, keep the building running, keep our staff here. So that's just another way to support us. So yeah, any support is appreciated always.
And also for those donations, you get a tax write-off to be able to kind of help you back out.
Sure do.
So, that's always a good, nice little incentive as well.
It is.
So Thomas, thank you for coming in and giving me this time of your day before you go on and do this tour here. It means a lot to me. Out of the 2.5 years that I've been doing this, this is one that I'm so excited for. I've been so thankful that I was given this opportunity, and I was afraid to reach out for a while because I'm like, I don't really have as big connections into this area, and learning from friends has kind of been like sticking to people I kind of know, but you got to branch out and you got to grow. And I'm like, if you don't ask, you don't know. So this was awesome. The quick responses.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Cade. It's really been a pleasure chatting with you and just talking about things related to history. I feel like I've learned a lot about you and your family, which is always, just a wonderful part of this job. So thank you for that.
Now, listeners, as we kind of start to wind down, if you want to reach out to me, I have a Facebook page, Learning from Friends Podcast. I do have a Twitter page that you can be able to find onto as well, Learning from Friends Podcast. I do have a Patreon page if you'd like to be able to kind of donate as well I do this for free. I do it for fun. It takes a lot of hours to be able to go in and do an episode of writing the outline, sitting here and recording this hour. I'll spend anywhere for every hour that I record. It usually takes about an hour and a half to be able to, an hour and a half to 2 hours for every hour because of all the the uhs, and all the different like little space in between. So it all adds up. And I teach. So having that time, it's a fun hobby, but it'd be nice to kind of get a little bit here. But my request to the audience here, the best way to be able to spread any knowledge is word of mouth. That is the best way, whether that is coming from just talking to your friend about just general podcasts or talking about historical societies or learning about Cherokee County in general. Always just kind of promote it in some way, form, or fashion, even if you're just doing it in passing. And it could literally be a neighbor, it could be somewhere in your classrooms, it could be somewhere else to it. And so please do. So as we leave out here, we all know those that have been listening for a long time or first time listeners here, you get to hear it now. My name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide on this lovely adventure that I like to call Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget to let your curiosity fly high.